Welcome, everyone.
Welcome, everyone. Good morning. We're so excited to have you here today. We're going to give everyone just a couple minutes to sign on as we're getting ready this Tuesday morning, but we're so excited to share some updates about a couple of CalCurriculum's new tools. Welcome, everyone. Good morning. We're going to be getting started in just a minute. Thank you for being here. We're so excited to share some updates with you all about some new tools from CalCurriculum to support your adoption process. All right. Welcome, everyone. Happy Tuesday. We're glad to have you here. Thanks for joining. We'll be getting started in just a moment. If you have any questions you're already thinking of as you're getting ready to join us today about a scenario or way we can support you, feel free to drop that in the Q&A. We'll make sure to answer those at the end. Otherwise, we'll go ahead and get started. So, welcome and good morning. My name is Morgan Shepherd. If you've been attending any CalCurriculum sessions over the past 3.5 years, you might be familiar with my face. I'm a prior elementary educator. I've worked with school systems across the United States, but I was born and raised in Los Angeles, currently located here, and my passion lies deeply in supporting California educators with their adoption and implementation of high quality instructional materials. We are so thrilled today to be welcoming you here and share about two new really exciting products that CalCurriculum has recently released to support you with this process of your math instructional materials adoption. Okay, so with that, just in case you're new, wanted to share a little context about what is CalCurriculum. CalCurriculum is a joint project of Unbound Ed and Ed Reports developed and tailored to support California educators. Our goal, as I mentioned, is to help districts adopt and implement high quality instructional materials. You might see that acronym in our slides about HQIM by providing independent reviews, actionable resources, and guidance, all tailored to the California context. So, a little bit more about our beliefs and why we're here and doing this work. Our belief is that strong curriculum adoption begins with a shared vision of instruction and a transparent decision-making process. We won't go deep into this in today's webinar, but if you are interested in learning more about how to engage in a strong instructional materials adoption process and resources to support the strong foundation, like setting a strong vision, please check out our website, and we have a lot of resources that can support you with this. Through free tools and learning opportunities, we help districts understand the landscape of high quality instructional materials and the best practices for adopting new materials. So with that, I am thrilled today to welcome two of my colleagues who have been the masterminds behind these great new tools. Shanna Estep and Hillary Arundel are here today to share more with you, and I will let them introduce themselves and share a little bit more.
Hi, everyone. I'm Shanna Estep. I'm the VP of Strategic Initiatives here at Unbound Ed and have been with CalCurriculum for almost 10 years now. I was on the original team who launched CalCurriculum way back almost 10 years ago. Can't believe that. I am here in Fresno, California. And this is my 34th year in education. Started as a middle school math and science teacher, go math and science teachers. And I'm really, really excited to share these tools with you. I'll turn it over to Hillary.
Hi everyone, I'm Hillary Brendel. I am here as a product development individual supporting the tools that we're so excited to share with you all. And in my past, I have been a teacher, like many of those who are probably on the call. I've supported with literacy and math development across the years at a few other organizations and have really hung tight to Unbound Ed, even previously when we had some core support for the past 5 years. And I'm very excited to be here.
Excellent. So today we are hoping to share with you an overview of the challenges that folks are having right now navigating the California math materials adoption list, which is huge. And we're going to share two of our new tools with you, hoping to make that challenge less of a challenge. We do want to make sure that you have an opportunity to provide some feedback because we are in the launching and V1 of these two tools, what we're calling the MVP, a minimal viable product, right? So these are our very first versions of these tools, and so we're in a space where we're collecting a lot of feedback from folks. So we're hoping that you can provide some feedback for us, and then we do have some question and answer time. If you have a question as we're sharing about the tools and about the process, please feel free to use the Q&A tool. You can write your questions, we'll see them, and then we'll save them for our question time later in the session toward the end. All right. Well, with that, we'll go ahead and get started. I do want to take a moment. I want you to picture this. Your adoption committee has been meeting for months. We know lots of California districts are actually engaged in a 2-year process. So lots of time thinking about these new materials. Your curriculum coordinators or directors or your math content folks have been managing review schedules on top of their regular job. And the team has looked at materials across, lots of grade spans, lots of publishers, tried to look at ed reports, evidence and data, what you're seeing in classrooms. And now, everybody's sitting around a table or sitting in a room, and you've got a couple of strong opinions forming about some of these choices, and we really don't have a way to resolve it. So your process, it has given you exactly what you needed up until this moment, and then potentially you're kind of stuck. So this is an example of a district. It's an anonymous district right now because we didn't name all of our districts, but this is an example of a district that we have recently worked with. They've had their publisher presentations. They had a room full of smart people, right? And they still were stuck looking at 12 programs with no time to actually do that. And so we know that districts historically have had some kind of adoption process. We've been doing this for a long time here in California. I know we had a process 30 years ago. So, we've got a process, but every time, I think about the list in 2014, that list had, I think, 14 options for K-8 to choose from. And even then, 14 was a lot. Now we're in a whole different situation. And so, our hope with these tools is to make sure that districts and adoption committees and folks that are leading adoption have really good information so that they can make the best choice, the easiest choice, right? And do so in a timely manner. We know that right now adopting math materials is in California a unique and uniquely complex. So most of you are somewhere in this process right now. I think that we even might have some folks who are joining from outside of California today. Welcome. All of our states have some kind of process around high quality instructional materials. Some states actually have very rigorous, here's a list of 4 or 5 things you can choose from. But if you're joining us from outside of California, just that all states go through this work, but California right now is kind of in a unique situation. We are a local control state, which means the list comes out, but districts are faced with doing the work of the curriculum review and selection process. The framework that came out in 2023, a much awaited and anticipated math framework, provides some really strong suggestions and guidance on what high quality math instruction should look like. And there's guidance there on what high quality instructional materials also should look like. But there is no, they don't advise on how to choose or what to choose. And the list this year really highlighted the fact that the state has established the eligibility and compliance with the state criteria, And everything that is recommended, and just about everything that all the programs that put in to be reviewed made it to the recommended list. I think there was just one that didn't. And so there are, lots of districts in California, different sizes, different contexts. And it means that your county offices may or may not be supporting you here. We do have to look at educator expertise, what we're bringing to the table, and then just the review, the capacity to do a review. As I said, lots of districts that we're working with right now have communicated they're in a 2-year process. Many districts are going into next school year in the 2026-2027 school year, piloting materials, and folks are scrambling right now to get to those two things that they want to pilot. Sometimes where this process breaks down, right, is around too many programs. There's no way to compare, right? So if you're at there are so many programs and we don't have a clear way to compare, it may sound like this, right? There are 22 programs for K-8 that we need to look at. We really don't have a way to quickly see which programs are aligned to our most basic needs. Also, California specific gaps. We have Ed Reports, which is great. Ed Reports is a national organization that reviews very deeply curriculum, but it's from a national program perspective, not a state specific perspective. So Ed Reports does not review for California specific materials. Their reports have great information that we can very easily make some assumptions about California specific materials, but again, it's a national review. And then finally, a third reason why sometimes the confidence breaks down is there's really no way to see what is best for a district's specific needs. And so I'm here in Fresno, California, right? And we've got Fresno Unified, Central Unified, Clovis Unified, all connected, sharing boundaries, sharing often students. But each one of those 3 districts is very unique in the students they serve, in the initiatives that they have moving forward, and those things that matter most to them. So these are 3 places where often committees, who are working very, very hard, still are in the process, scrambling to find things that best fit their needs. And that's why we built these tools. The current conditions we have, right? So none of this means that your district can't make a great decision. It means that the process needs some better infrastructure than most districts currently have. And that's exactly what's been missing, right? We have 64 things that have been approved on the list. Every single K-8 submission was accepted and recommended, right? Which means all of the work for comparing and evaluating and assessing lands on a district's shoulders. A lot of the programs that are still in use, and this is from CEMD, the Center for Educational Market Dynamics, recently did a research paper on what is being used in classrooms right now. The majority of programs in California being used are programs that were selected back in 2014 and 2015, right? Which predate the 2023 framework and the recommendations that we had in the framework. And there might be then a big shift in teacher practice when we're looking at these new materials. Also, we know that some district curriculum, either teams or focused content folks or leaders, are small, and they're managing multiple things across many content areas. And we know that the literacy list we're on the heels of a new literacy list as well, I think at the end of this year. So those folks at the central office are expected to lead a really rigorous review without a lot of dedicated time and staffing. And then a lot of district leaders, and this is from our work we've worked with over 100 districts here in California and more than that across the country. Most district leaders feel really confident in selecting the materials, but far fewer have a clear process for narrowing, or what we call winnowing, the options. How do you get from 64 or 24 or 25 down to the 4 or 5 or 6 things that your committee is actually going to review? And especially doing that without seeming biased, right? So if a district's a central office team says we took these 25 things, we got them down to these five things, folks want to know, well, how did you get from the 25 things to five? And oh, is it because dot, 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 dot of past practice? I'm going to turn it over to Hillary because Hillary, do you want to just share a little bit, an overview, a quick overview of these two tools, and then I'll go into the process.
Yeah, thanks, Jenna. And thank you everyone for joining. So as we start to get into the process, we want to give a quick overview of the new tools. We'll be getting into the tools a bit more later in the webinar. So imagine, right, if we're saying, what if we had the right tools? And that is our goal. We want to provide you with the right tools. Our first tool is our Math List Hub. The purpose of this tool is trying to eliminate the time-consuming process of researching, getting all the information, and just knowing what's on the list. We really want to enable districts to efficiently narrow or winnow, as Shanna has just shared, the list to your options. But we know even if we narrow that list, even if we're winning down to 4 or 5, there's still 4 or 5 curricula, and that's still a lot of work to get through. And so here comes in our second tool, Between the Greens. With Between the Greens, we're really hoping to solve the challenge of how do you pick between these two really great, highly rated curricula or four that meet your needs, right? That meet those clear non-negotiables that you have. So we've created another tool. We'll call it a report for right now, but we're looking for feedback that provides you with comparative analysis to help you make that final decision, to help you compare these products that can seem really similar. And it might be that little difference of how we engage students with language or how we have them engage with the problems that is going to be the reason it's going to work best for you all.
Thanks, Hillary. All right, so let's talk a little bit about where we see these tools fall in an adoption process. At Unbound Ed and through CalCurriculum, we work with lots and lots of districts that are adopting new instructional materials, and we've been doing that for, as I said, nearly 10 years. We've learned that a comprehensive, transparent process is really critical to ensuring that the chosen materials are implemented well, right? That's our whole reason for doing this work is so that students get what they deserve and something that is, chosen and selected is really implemented well. So this slide shows the Unbound Ed adoption processes and how these two tools fit squarely into the process to support each next step. So in these two first phases, phases 1 and 2, this is like the preparing phase, right? We're preparing the process by making sure you have a strong vision of instruction for the content, then deeply understanding the needs of your students, your schools, your community. And then in phases 3 and 4, it's time to dive deeply into the materials. We have a lot of recommendations about how to do this and when to do this and making sure that folks really understand, have a clear picture of what the needs are before you start rolling up your sleeves and diving into materials, which is very different than some districts' processes in the past. But in phases 3 and 4, when we take our deep dive, those activities that we did in phases 1 and 2 all take place before considering the market, the list, and your district specific review criteria so that you're very, very clear already from the get-go what you need from the materials. So the Math List Hub comes in this like understanding and evaluating the options. This is really understanding the market. It's when you've established those non-negotiables for your adoption, and those things are like those are the boundaries around your adoption. For example, the materials have to be a K-8 format, or they must include TK as part of their program, or they must have a print option, so I can print all of the materials and they're print forward. So there are lots of boundaries that have nothing to do with a specific criteria around, especially in the framework that you see in the materials. These are things that are hard and fast rules that help us figure out which one of these materials could potentially be the one, right? And as Hillary described before, and I'll let her talk a little more deeply about the Math List Hub, our first tool to do that is the Math List Hub.
Thanks, Shanna. And so with our first tool, and I know we keep emphasizing this, but we want to continue to make sure the purpose is very clear. It is going to help you winnow and narrow efficiently. So the key features are that it centralizes the programs. So it's going to save you time instead of trying to figure out who's on the list. Everyone is listed on there. And we have quick yes, no criteria, right? The purpose of the math list hub is to narrow the list. And to narrow the list, we want the quick answers, the yes and the no's. We'll get to the deeper questions after. And so those are going to be your quick non-negotiables. Does it have TK? Are there Spanish teacher editions? Is it LMS compatible? What are my key categories? And in checking those boxes and naming your criteria, you will narrow that list down. And once you have your final list, then you can start getting into those deeper questions.
Yeah, Hillary, I'll just show quickly. We won't get too far into it because we have an opportunity for them to kind of play around a little bit later, but I'll close that. So here we get to the list hub. You put in your filters, grade levels. Do you want it to be have been reviewed by ed reports? Was it green in expectations for alignment and usability? Do you want them to be printed, etc.? Do LMS integration with Google Canvas or Schoology? Do you want something that was an illustrative math product? So there are 6 different illustrative math programs on the California list. You might not realize that there are. So do you want them to be a derivative of that? Do you need a TK program, et cetera, et cetera? Pardon me. By filtering, then you get, oh, let me cross it. Let's say you want a Spanish teacher's edition close. Well, we're going to show you how to do this a little bit later as well. I'm going to take off all of these filters so you can see what is available here totally. This is the entire state list of 64 programs. All of the filters are across here. And then depending on what those non-negotiables are, you can select those here in the filter. Great. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them into the Q&A. As the next part, so as part of phase 2, you've established some criteria for your review committee based on your vision and your needs assessment or your data discovery. And this criteria will help you focus your review on the elements of the program that your students and teachers need most to successfully reach your vision of instruction. So when we're talking about our phases here, so you've done this work in phase 1 and phase 2. Part of phase 2, you've started to develop your review criteria and a review tool. Once you have those, 4 to 5 categories of your priorities, then we move you to phase 4 here, which you can use between the greens. So in phase 4, you've already established what your 4 or 5 most important criteria are for for the materials and to reach your vision. So this could be anything from we need strong alignment with open tasks to the California framework. Potentially, you have a large population of multilingual learners, and so you need your materials to support teachers to address and engage multilingual learners, to build their academic language, and offer to all students opportunities for academic discourse and math discussion. If those are the things that you've landed on as your priorities, between the greens and eventually will help you see those 4 or 5 categories in a deeper way. Hillary, you want to talk about the tool?
Yeah, thanks, Shanna. And so with our Between the Greens, again, as Shanna has been sharing, it is a journey. It is the next phase. We've already narrowed our list, and now we're thinking about 2 to 3 that we've really focused on. Again, as this is an MVP, our minimal viable product in our first iteration, you'll see Between the Greens reports for illustrative mathematics, Kendall Hunt, and CMC. What we're really focusing on here is what are the categories and going beyond those categories to provide information that'll help those selecting think critically about what each program will offer and how that will support your needs. It goes beyond focusing on strong ratings and thinking really about what are the similarities, how is this going to support my specific needs or my students, and thinking about, are the tasks open-ended? Is there a structured lesson flow? What are the math language routines looking like? And thinking about it in action. I'm sorry, and thank you, Shannon. Yes, CNC for Classroom Mathematics, California.
Yeah, no problem. So, um, if we take a look at Kendall Hunt's illustrative map, you can see we've got a description here of the program organization, some strengths in those four categories: scaffolds and supports for access, open and engaging tasks, assessment tools, planning, teaching, and teacher knowledge. So, as part of our work with districts, we surveyed committees, adoption committees, for their 3 to 4 top criteria. And so through some feedback sessions, we landed on these 4 criteria. Our plans are to continue learning from districts, and if it's an additional criteria we add or we adjust, that will come through our feedback sessions. But these were designed to understand the level at which some of the most highly rated curricula align to specific district priority. So once we've gone through these 4 categories, scaffolds, open engaging tasks, assessment tools, and then planning, teaching, and teacher knowledge, we do present some considerations. So if districts are thinking about IMKH right now, then these are things that they need to think about when they're going through their review process, right? So language development. There are language learning goals in this particular program, but if that's really important to you, you need to consider doing a deeper review for that. Assessment is also something you will need to consider when your committee is reviewing here, and there's some language there to kind of guide your review committee. And then this product is print forward, and so if that's something that your team values or doesn't, then that's an additional area for your team's review. All right, so we're going to give you an opportunity to kind of work through with Hillary a district scenario. We'll drop that link of the scenario into the chat so you can read that a little bit better. Yep. Thanks, Morgan.
Thanks, Morgan, for putting that in the chat. All right, so now we're going to get into thinking about these tools in action. And to support the tools in action, we have created a scenario, and hopefully you'll be able to see that district scenario on the screen. And so we have our large California district. We're going to call them Westlake Unified. If you are reading the scenario in the PDF, you'll see that. Currently, there's 50,000 plus students, and they're already 1 year into their K-12 math adoption. They have targeted middle school. Middle school feels like the space. It's the zone where they need support, where they really want these materials to matter. But this is not standalone. They can't just focus on a 6 to 8 adoption, but that might be what you need, right? We understand their different needs. They need something that's either going to take them K-8 or go 6-12, so that it's going beyond that one grade band and going across grade bands. They know that there's at least 24 approved programs that are for 6 to 8 alone. And so the team needs to figure out, of those, which ones are either going to also go K-8 for us or 6-12 to meet our needs. They've had some presentations, they've gotten all the emails, all the spreadsheets, all the information, and have decided that this is just not going to work for us. What we want is just a short list that's going to help us figure out our needs on our time. So this is the picture, this is the scenario. In comes our tool. So I'm going to open up and navigate into our Math List hub and then go through how we would help Westlake, or if I was Westlake, how we would navigate this. How would we be able to come to this scenario, filter through, and arrive at some options for ourselves? And so in a moment, hopefully you'll be able to see our Math List Hub in action. If my computer will play nicely with me. And there we go. So are you able to see the Math List tab? Great. And so you would navigate to the Math List tab on CalCurriculum under our Jobs Student. If you go to our Math List Hub framework, it's going to be the first thing. It's our new tool. It's shiny. We want you to look at it. We want you to use it. So I'm Westlake. I know that I need something that isn't just going to be 6-8. I am going to navigate into the 6-8 grade band, but I know it has to also participate in 9 through 12. So I'm going to click on it also has a full high school line program. Okay, narrowed it down a little bit. That's not going to be enough. I need to think about what other considerations we have. We want Spanish teacher editions. And you know what? I think I also want the core materials to be printed too. I want variety. I don't just want to be on a platform. Okay, we've got a few more narrowed options. You could continue playing with the filter. We could think about, has it met expectations? Has it been reviewed in the last 5 years? And this is actually shortening our list because before I could scroll down and now we're about right at the bar. If I wanted to navigate and have even less, I could continue to click. But I think I'm going to pause here for the purposes of being able to see. It will depend on what the core filters are. It'll depend on your needs. But right now I'm thinking about Westlake and I'm focusing on going 6-12. But we know another way they could filter their list is going K-8. They just want to make sure it fits in the band. For the purposes of filtering on the call, I'm going to look and see where I can make a connection, right? And I know I can make a connection between the Kendall Hunt and our Between the Greens. So if we're imagining we're Westlake and we're going through, we've filtered a bit. We want to probably filter continue to get to 4 to 5. But what I can say is, hey, there's one on this list that I know has another tool. I'm curious what that can get me and where I can go. So we would encourage from that point of having your list to then see how our second phase of the tool, the Between the Greens, could come in. And so if we're on the CalCurriculum site, we can navigate to our report and click on illustrative mathematics and think about where we are with Kendall Hunt. I could scroll through this report and think about, I know it's going to meet my needs in terms of it's going to go 6-12. It's going to give me the Spanish teacher editions, right? And it's going to be print forward. I know that from my filters. So when I look at this report, that's not what I'm looking for. That was provided for me in my ability to narrow on the math list sub without actually having to, right, leave my seat. I'm able to do that independently. I can come up with my list. I had my non-negotiables. Secretly, I get to do it without getting too many emails about, do you want to look at our materials, right? It's kind of nice to have that space to get your list. Now I can look at their program and, as we say, ask the other questions, right? What are the meaty questions? How are the scaffolds actually going to support my students in the district? How are the tasks going to be engaging? What assessments do they have? This allows me to focus on the things that matter beyond our non-negotiables and think about how they're going to apply in the classroom. And here we see just the strengths and consideration summaries. For again, the purposes of the MVP, you'll see the comparison focus with the two reports we have. But as that builds, the comparison focus could be between something else from the list that would fit us for Westlake, what we need and what we would be looking for. And we could really think about, if we do this, what are we planning for? Consider across what the two options would give us. And then if I really wanted to get deep into the weeds, I can download the report and I can look at the long frame and think about all of the other information that I would want. And then I can bring this all to my team. I can go back, I will have a narrow list, I will have a report that provides deeper information, and we can engage in a committee discussion and really feel like we have the information that we need to make a great selection.
Thanks, Hillary. We're going to move on to some questions because we've got some questions. Are you ready for that?
Right. Yeah, I'm going. Then I was like, and now we're back. Now we pulled
And
out
now
of
we're
our
back.
curriculum site. We pulled out of helping Westlake, and now we're back as Shanna and Hillary supporting our MVP, and we can answer some questions.
One of the questions was, will there be more programs added to the Between the Greens?
Yes, there
Great
will be.
question.
That's a great question. There will be more programs added. And if there are suggestions, we already have a running list based off some of the districts we've been working with, but we're open to feedback and suggestions. So if there are folks out there or they're like, we've already narrowed our list and here are our top two, it'd be great if we could see one on this one. Please go forth and feel free to leave that in our feedback survey later.
Yes, excellent. We are hoping in our launch in the summertime to add four or five more publishers to Between the Greens. So be on the lookout for that. Um, Along that same line, in that same question, will you be adding any categories for the List Hub? So we had about 10 categories for the List Hub. Um, the question wants to know, the person wants to know if we're going to add any additional categories.
That's a great question. We are definitely open to adding categories. At this time, we've collected some feedback, and what we've heard is a bit more of defining the current categories. So, when we say, and we have a note on there, and I won't go back now, but because we're going to give you some time to play on the list hub, but you'll see when I filtered for meets expectations. We're talking about national ed reports, and we have a note there that says in the last 5 years, right? And really clearly defining that either with a pop-up or something that goes wider, or what is LMS integration? What do some of these categories mean? Just to help folks really know what those filters are for. So again, not opposed to adding more categories, but right now our feedback is pushing us to think about how we define the categories before we add more of them, because in some of those definitions, it might change the need for another category. And happy to share, actually, as we're in the MVP stage, we had more. We started out with a few more categories. We were playing around with maybe we should have a filter for this. Before it was, does it have a platform? Is it LMS, but does it also have a platform? And so we have gone back and forth on some of the ones like an LMS integration, which it can push itself into, is the question actually a platform or is it just compatibility? We keep those categories, but we thought about having three instead of two. And so again, really open to feedback there, where right now the categories feel aligned based off of the district feedback and what we're seeing in the landscape, thinking about defining, but I could be swayed. I can be swayed.
Yeah, thanks for that, Hillary. I think when I consider adding categories to the list hub, I'm really focused on those things that can be answered yes, no, right? The whole point of the list hub is, are there just basic non-negotiables that a district would require that we can answer in a yes, no fashion, right? We know folks care about potentially the math language routines or what additional supports are available for our multilingual learners. But right now, we're focused on those very big, broad boundaries, either grade level spans or certain grade levels need to be included, or I absolutely have to have something that is available in both English and Spanish. Um, those 10 categories seem to be the most used and needed categories. I would even say that potentially we have less categories, right? We figure out a way, as to Hillary's comment, to define those categories better so that those yes no questions really get us a nice trim list down from our 24 or 25.
And I
These are
think you
great questions. Yeah.
I think you added a really great point there, Shannon, that I know we had in a slide about the math list hub, but I want to double down on our stamp and thinking about how these tools fit into the process and with all the other tools and materials, right? The math list hub isn't a stand-in, right, for some of these reports, but it is going to answer your yes, no questions. So sometimes when you go through materials or you go through the reports, it can take a lot to just get to the question of, does it have a platform? And so what we done is we've really streamlined those yes, no questions. We put the category clearly and just gave you the checkbox. And then you can go back to those reports. You can go to Between the Greens to know, well, how does it integrate, right? Or that's the question to the publisher. But we're kind of helping you get to those answers very quickly, know if it's there, and then you can go back to those other materials or the Between the Greens to get more information about it. But it's very much the yes no, because we know there are other things folks would like, but our filters are definitely yes no.
Great. Um, Another question we had was, what was the process used to get the information on the list hub? And I think this question is about like, did we do a review? Did we, so I'll just start with these were a set of yes no questions, and the information, the process we used was the what we gathered from the districts we were working with, who were telling us about platforms and Spanish materials, etc. Also, we went straight to the publisher's website. All of those materials are linked on the state site, right? You can go see samples of those materials. So we took those categories, those 10 categories, and we went directly to the publisher's website to see if it was if they had those things that was yes or no, or if they even shared whether they had those components. And then finally, we asked the publishers, right? Did we have these correct? And so the process for the list hub was more of a, here are 10 things that we're considering. Let's figure out from the districts we worked with how they would respond. Let's check each of the publishers' websites. So we went to all the websites. And then for some of the programs, we met with publishers and we asked them if what we had was correct. Hillary, anything you would add to that?
No, that is exactly it.
Great. I will say the last thing I'll say before we move on to the next section is our hope, specifically with the Between the Greens, but really with both of these tools, our hope is to help making a decision easier. We're not making the decision for you. These are not tools that make recommendations. We're not, even though we started with Curriculum Associates Classroom Mathematics and Kendall Hunt's Illustrative, that is in no way a recommendation of those two products. Our hope is that these tools will help an adoption committee or a review committee be more targeted in their review, right? We're hoping the list hub eliminates some of the time spent in checking to see if they have Spanish materials or reaching out and emailing, as Hillary said. And we're hoping with Between the Greens that we are putting the power into the hands of a review committee to target their review more specifically, so that they can more easily make a decision and more efficiently. This is all about efficiency and ease. We are not making that decision. We hope that this information is added to a district review, not in lieu of a district review. All right. I think
Great.
we're ready to move on.
Great. And with that, we are at the time where we want you all to be able to engage with the tools and give us some live build or some survey feedback. So we're going to take, looking at the clock, 10:44. We're going to take about 8 minutes to explore, let you all explore the tools, and then 2 minutes to fill out the survey. And so thank you to Morgan for already sharing. If you open up the survey, you will see the two links to the tools, the math list hub in Between the Greens, but we'll also re-chat them out. And what we would love for you all to do is to open the tools, play with the filters, think about your district, your needs, see how it helps you winnow down your list, and then read the reports. Is that the information you would love to see there? And then provide us with that feedback, because we are in that time. We are feedback and testing before we get into our second iteration. And so now is the time to have your voice heard. And then I've just sent back out the links as well, so you can access them either via the survey or right within these links. We'll give you out, like I said, 8 minutes to explore. And just for a time check, we have about 3 more minutes of exploration of the math list tab and in between the greens. And then after that, we would love for you to shift into the survey. If you haven't started, or you can be working back and forth between exploring the tools and going into the survey and leaving your feedback. Awesome. Thank you all so much for exploring the tools. And if you haven't had a chance to put in the survey, don't worry, it will still be open. And I'm just going to walk us through our closeout, and then you can go back and make sure you have time for that. Just to, one, help you all know the full picture, and to emphasize how important this feedback is right now in our timeline. And so, as we've shared over the course of developing these tools, we've been researching with districts. It's how we got to those categories, how we landed on creating some of those reports. We went into development mode. We launched these tools in early March. We've been sending emails, blasting it out. One of those emails landed you in this webinar right now, which we're so thankful for. And we are feedback and testing. This is spring. This is April. We are here. And this is all so that we can gear up for our second iteration. So again, this feedback is it is so valuable. It is helping us with our second iteration and improving these tools, as Shanna said, not to replace, not to make the choice for you, but to help you get your time back, to help you feel empowered that you have quick and easy access to the information you need to make these very important decisions. And so coming up soon, we do have other webinars for our CalCurriculum cycle. We have one tomorrow, planning ahead for the cost of your pilot. And we do have some guest session with Project Evident. And then in June 4th, we've just selected Now What? Thinking about the adoption leadership community of practice. We want to thank you so much for taking time out of your day to join us today in this webinar. Again, if you have any questions, please email us at info@calcurriculum.org. And with the remaining time, if you could please fill out the survey. Again, we do really value that feedback. It is going right back into development to take a few minutes to fill it out before you leave the webinar. And Shanna, I don't know if you want to have any
Yep.
closeout.
I just wanted to say thank you, everyone. Thanks so much for joining today. And we really do appreciate any and all feedback.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.